Hello.
Hi. Hello. Nice to see you all. Welcome. Just waiting for the last few people to come in, I think. That's it. It's so nice to see everybody's faces. Loads of you as well. So I think we're going to get cracking just because of time and, kind of want to get on with this afternoon. We're all very excited about it. We've even put makeup on and everything, you'll be pleased to know. So you're getting the best version of ourselves. What was that? Okay, so if you'd like to put yourselves on mute, that would be great. I'll talk about that a bit in a minute. It just helps with the background noise. So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 4th annual International Women's Day event. Thank you for supporting the event. We really appreciate it. We've been blown away, really, by the amount of people who have booked on. This year, we're doing the event in partnership between the Lincolnshire Agricultural Society and with us at Fortis Therapy Training. And it's wonderful to see so many of you here and really familiar faces as well as some new ones, which is great. Especially at this time, in terms of having an annual event and it being a virtual one. So if you like to keep your cameras on, that would be great. It just helps the speakers to have an audience to speak to and to see reactions and responses. That would be fab. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, I'm Alexis. I'm the Managing Director at Fortis. I have a lot of different roles that I do, but I'm a professional speaker, a TEDx speaker, psychotherapist, coach, mediator and trainer. So all of those things to do with people, really. And Fortis is multi-award winning and we are a therapeutic mental health and wellbeing service. We're really passionate about supporting people of all ages across the UK and in all sectors as well. So we provide a big range of different effective support and development, whether that's for individuals, couples, families, businesses, organisations or schools. And we're really proud to be partnering with the Lincolnshire Agricultural Society, which was formed back in 1869. And as a charitable organisation, they're very passionate about promoting and supporting education, food, farming and the countryside within Lincolnshire's local community. So it's a great opportunity for us to work together. So in terms of this event, the Lincolnshire Agricultural Society has hosted International Women's Day events at the Lincolnshire Showground for the last 3 years. If you can put yourselves on mute, that would be great, just because of the background noise. Thank you. It's always been a really well-attended event, and the speakers that the Showground team involved over the years have always been very current and inspiring women. And I would say that because last year I was one of the speakers, and I was fortunate enough to join the lineup for the event. And it was actually the last in-person speaking event that I did before lockdown. And it was a fantastic afternoon. And we loved the event so much that we thought we would offer to partner with the Agricultural Society and the Showground because we wanted to be more actively involved this year and act as a partner for 2021. We are going to be recording the event. It's already recording at the moment, and Joe, who's working on the background, is managing it so that the speakers are being seen, and it won't be all of the audience that are being seen all of the time, just so that you're aware of that. But if I could ask everyone to put themselves on mute, that would be great. It just helps with the sound quality and it just helps the speakers to kind of keep their concentration as well. We want the event to be interactive because we're all missing that, I think. But there will be a space at the end where you can ask questions, and there'll be a Q&A panel discussion as well later on. So during the talks, Joe and Sarah will be managing the chat function. So if you've got any questions as we go along for the speakers, please feel free to, put your questions in there, make your comments, share any ideas you've got, or just chat amongst yourselves as well as we're going through the afternoon. If you have a question for a particular speaker, if you'd like to just say who the question is for, that would really help us out at the end. And at the bottom right hand of your screen, you'll see a reactions function. So we can all see different emojis in there. Please feel free to use those. It's great for the speakers if you can, use those reactions to show how you feel about things. And we'll go back to any of the questions that you put in at the end in the Q&A. On the same emoji button, you'll see a raise your hand as well. So at the end, if you want to ask your question live, you can do that by just raising your hand and clicking that. If some of you haven't got that and you can't see it, which for some reason we've discovered that not everybody has it, if you'd like to just put in the chat that you'd like to ask a question live, and we'll make sure that you get the chance to do that at the end as well. So throughout the afternoon, if you're on social media, it would be great if we can, share your experiences as we're going along. Feel free to tag any posts with hashtag IWD2021 and hashtag choose to challenge, and also tag at Fortis Therapy and at Lincolnshire Showground, sorry. For those of you who've ordered a grazing box from Healing Manor, which I have to say is bloody delicious, please tag them as well at Healing Manor into your post and show any pictures of any food that you've ordered or the gin and tonic they might be drinking as well this afternoon. We'll also be sharing in the chat the speakers' social media details. So, if you want to get in touch with anybody or you want to tag any of the speakers, then you'll have that information as well. The plan for the afternoon is that we thought that if anyone's used Zoom as much as I have over the past year, that we would probably not do hour-long talks just because of our concentration levels. And it's a Friday afternoon. So what we've challenged these amazing ladies to do is to deliver TEDx-style talks for 15 minutes each. So that in itself is going to be interesting to see how they pack that 15 minutes with great content, which I'm really looking forward to hearing. The context of the theme of this afternoon and the international theme of International Women's Day is choose to challenge. And when we realised this, and after all the challenges that we've all faced over the last year to some degree or another, we felt it was important to have an event that acknowledges and celebrates rising to the challenge or even choosing to challenge ourselves on different levels. At Fortis, the reason we used the name Fortis and we chose it was that it's a Latin word and it means brave and strong. And at Fortis, we've never ceased to be amazed by how brave and strong people of all ages can be and how they work hard to overcome the challenges that life has thrown at them. All of our incredible speakers have chosen the challenge or challenged themselves and or have risen to the challenge they have faced with amazing determination, innovation and creativity. For our first speaker for you today, we have one hell of a lady. She's an award-winning high-performance business coach, a channel swimmer. She was telling us the other day about dunking in cold water every morning as well, which whilst wearing a woolly hat. She's also faced the Dragon's Den and is a best-selling author. So welcome today's first guest to our virtual stage, Claire Brumby.
Hi, have I done the first thing and unmuted myself correctly? Can you all hear me? Yep, right, okay. I'm minimising my camera because I hate looking at myself on camera, so I'm just going to crack on with my talk now. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm so chuffed to be here with you at this International Women's Day event and sharing a few bits with you. As Alexis has just told you, I've done quite a few bits and pieces. I've achieved all of that along the way. I've had a few chunks taken off me and had 7 bells knocked out of me from time to time, but I'm going to share a few bits and pieces of those key takeouts with you now. So can you remember a defining moment in your life, one where you just knew things and you would never be the same again? That moment for me was on the 13th of August 2005, and my life was about to change forever. I was at work. It was a pretty normal day, and at that time I was in the hospitality industry, managing a hotel and spa. It was a normal high-stress day. I was flying around the hotel when I suddenly experienced crushing chest pains. I couldn't breathe or stand. I thought I was having a heart attack. I don't know why I thought that. I'd never had a heart attack, but that's just what my brain was telling me. The pain hit me from nowhere and it came on within a second. It completely floored me. I managed to get myself to the doctors, and from there on in, things became a little bit of a blur. I remember the doctor telling me that he thought it could be a pulmonary embolism, which is a PE, a blockage of a major blood vessel by a blood clot, and he needed to get me to the hospital immediately or I might die. When I arrived at the hospital, I remember the nurses trying to take blood from my veins, trying, as it was proving very difficult. That was a sure sign that it was a pulmonary embolism. And yes, that's what it turned out to be. I'm an extremely lucky survivor. I don't know what the survival rates were back then, but I know that there was a very real chance that I would have died. And if it hadn't have been by the fast action of the doctors and the medical teams, I would not have survived. Now, I don't want to go all woo-woo when you were here, but I did choose to live. I was so weak and exhausted, and I wasn't sure if I could carry on breathing. And I remember being asked, don't ask me by who, it wasn't a physical person. Did I want to stay or go? And I'm like, what? Are you crazy? Stay or go? Of course I'm staying. My kids need me. And I ran through the occasions that they would need me. The first bras for my daughters, boyfriends, getting married. And George was just 13 months old. He wouldn't have even remembered me. All these things and occasions flashed through my brain in one sense. But in another sense, I felt like I was actually living them. I felt strangely calm, safe, and pain-free while this conversation was going on. But there was no question I was staying. I wasn't going anywhere. My kids needed me. I remember the song playing on the radio when I came round, Daniel Powter, Bad Day. And to this day, whenever I hear that song, I recall the feeling of being in a hospital bed and choosing to stay. Now that day, back in August, on the 13th of August 2005, it really changed me. It changed who I am. It challenged me. It challenged my mind, my body, my beliefs. And I now have zero tolerance to BS, to time wasting, to procrastination, to merely existing, living in comfort zones and settling for less that I know that I'm capable of. Now, it took me quite some time to get over the PE. I was really tired and exhausted for a long, long time. And I was on a whole host of different medications. I'd have to have weekly blood tests and my body didn't like the medication. And it presented that with my hair falling out and my joints aching. So I made a decision that I was going to turn to nutrition and decide to see what I could do to cure myself, basically, which then became the next chapter in my life. I did self-medicate effectively through food, and to this day I take no medication whatsoever. What happened next was my husband and I launched a food brand. This came from a new interest in all things nutrition and health given my illness. We'd researched a whole host of different products that we could have explored, that we could have launched, but we wanted something which was healthy and child friendly given our kids were now 4, 7 and 11. We launched the food brand. We'd narrowed it down to crisps, and the brand we launched was called Scrubby's Vegetable Crisps. They were lower fat, lower calorie, lower sugar, lower salt. And at the time, we were the only independent vegetable crisp company in the UK. Now, the food landscape back then wasn't what it is now. We're talking 10 years ago. Healthy snacking didn't exist, and we had a real uphill battle on our hands, a mountain to climb, not only to convince the general public that healthy snacking was the way forward, but obviously to convince anybody to invest in the business too. Now, whilst I was recovering from my blood clot, John and I, quite stupidly, but you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Lived on credit cards, and we got ourselves into about £30,000 worth of debt. John couldn't work because he had to look after our 3 kids, and I couldn't work and do because I had no strength. I literally couldn't even pick George up. I had no upper body strength for a long, long time. So yeah, we got ourselves into a lot of bad debt. So trying to get money and trying to get a loan to launch and a business off the ground was no easy task. And add to the equation that we had absolutely no industry of the food industry, it was a huge undertaking. I remember pitching for some money and I literally got laughed out of the room by some gentlemen in suits, sat there saying to me, this is never going to work. Nobody wants healthy snacking. Everybody wants fat, sugar, salt, you know, all of this sort of thing. So we went up and down the country, literally to so many different angel investment meetings, and we were unsuccessful every single time. Anyway, then we found our local chamber were taking applications for loans for people who had no other means of getting credit. And one of the criteria was that we had to take 3 bank rejection letters from high street banks. Well, that was absolutely no problem whatsoever because no bank or financial body would touch us with a barge pole. So we went armed with our rejection letters and eventually got the money to launch, which was a £50,000 loan. So now it's 2012, we've got launched and we've got our first big listing, which is Harrods. And you know what, it's quite funny because when we were looking to get launched, I remember going to London and trawling around all the prestigious food halls. And I remember being in Harrods, literally dreaming of one day when I could be in there with my product. And then years later, here I am, stood sampling my brand. So we got off the starting blocks and we were doing absolutely everything humanly possible that we could to get this brand and this business going. We were traveling up and down the country, putting our kids in the van, taking them to every single market, festival, everything we could to really get off the starting blocks. And everything started happening quite fast for us then. We won the Theo Fortis Small Business Sunday, and that really started putting us on the map. We went and met Theo, we won Great Taste Awards, we won Free From Awards, we won Cool Brand, we were named Cool Brand twice, and things were really rocking and rolling. It was a hell of a lot of hard work, but we started gaining some real traction. And then I went to an event and I got given some amazing nugget of advice that I'll never forget from a gentleman called Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, whose brand is the Black Farmer. And he said to me, be a positive, disruptive influence. And that really ignited something in my brain and kicked me off on my guerrilla marketing campaigns. That got me in front of quite a lot of celebrities and key influencers. We were successful in being accepted to the first Chris Evans Car Fest event. And that's where I got the photograph with Chris Evans with the crisps in his mouth. And I call that the money shot, because that's when we started being able to attract some buyers. And it helped me get through so many doors that would have otherwise been closed to me had I have not taken these words on board of being a positive, disruptive influence and transferring that in my mind to mean let's go guerrilla with all our marketing. So all of this pounding the streets took us on all these different listings that we won, but you know, it still wasn't enough. We needed more money, we needed more traction, we needed more impact. We'd only started with a £50,000 loan and things were getting extremely tight in the business. We were running out of money and we needed to gain this traction even faster. So I had this harebrained idea one day and I thought, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to apply to go on Dragon's Den. So I contacted Dragon's Den and we got through the auditions and then we got through to the show selection, and sure enough, we were there, we pitched on Dragon's Den. It was the 1st of April 2014. And at the time, the Dragons were Deborah Meaden, Peter Jones, Duncan Bannatyne, Piers Linney and Kelly Hopham. We pitched for £75,000 in return for 15% equity. We were in the den for a good hour and we got aired on TV for 10 minutes. Now, unfortunately, the rules of the den are if you only come away with half a deal, half an offer, you don't get the deal, and we came away with nothing. Duncan offered half of the money straight out of the gate, and there was a bit of a dance going on with Peter Jones. Was he going to invest? Wasn't he going to invest? And in the end, he didn't. He just delivered me a killer line, and he said to me, and these words will stick with me, and actually later on I'll tell you about another time when I met Peter after he said this to me, but he said to me, he said, you've got a dream, you've got a business, but you're broke. And I was like, yeah, that's the truth, Peter. And if you get to watch the clip, you'll see me say, but we're not going to give in, we're going to continue and we're going to make it into, we're going to build a really great brand. And that's what we did. Anyway, so we walked away from the den empty-handed. Now, the Dragon's Den experience was really soul destroying in one way, but it was really great for the brand. And again, in the same way that other things had opened doors, this helped to open doors. And not long after, we got our listing with Waitrose and Ocado, and that helped elevate us even further. But it's at this point in the journey when I always thought of the Winston Churchill quote, where he says, if you're going through hell, keep going. And we were going through hell. By no stretch of anybody's imagination were we out of the woods. We still hadn't got any investment and we still needed to get some money. And actually getting the new listings had added to the cash flow pressure. So the need to get investment accelerated even faster. So we started talking to investors and we eventually got a deal over the line. Now, what I always say to people in their business now is when the fun goes, the passion dies. And by this time, the fun had really gone in the business. We've been working and growing the business with our investors. We'd introduced more products to the range, the sales were increasing, but I had become really, really unhappy. I felt like I was on the hamster wheel that I'd been fortunate enough to be plucked off at the very beginning of this roller coaster when life challenged me to change course with my life through the PE. And I was like, what is this all for? What am I doing it for? I reflected on what I set out to do and what I'd achieved. Launch a healthy snacking brand, yep. Win awards for the brand, list with major retailers, make a difference to people through healthy eating, have fun along the way, meet amazing people. I'd learned through experience that which no amount of money could have ever bought. I'd made some of my happiest memories with the kids, and I'd become an expert in the field of launching and growing a food business. And imagine how I felt when I was sipping royal champagne at St James's Palace, chatting with the Duke and Duchess of York, this last from Lincolnshire, with a handful of GCSEs and a raft of bad debt, choosing to challenge life and really live it. I'd achieved all I'd set out to do. We'd done all of this from one idea standing on a market stall one day, and in the end created a multi-award winning international food brand. And you know, for me, there was nothing more to achieve. We've been slogging hard at it for a good 10-year journey when you take into account all the years of research and pitching for the launch funding. And I was so exhausted with it all. So yeah, we decided to sell the brand and move on. But then I was like, well, what am I going to do now? We'd had this relentless decade of stress and pressure, and you know, it really taken its toll. It took its toll on us mentally, physically, emotionally, in our marriage, with our kids. And I needed a release for this. I needed a release for all of these pressures that I'd had, but more on that in a minute. So taking on board the advice that I'd given myself earlier on when I'd met Wilfred Emmanuel Jones about being a positive disruptive influence and doing all my guerrilla marketing, I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go guerrilla again. And I'd recently seen an article where a plus-size model, Iska Lawrence, was laid on the floor wearing only her underwear and surrounded herself in Seabrook crisps when she was hitting out at critics who were calling her obese and fat. And so she decided to do this photo shoot to hit back at them. So I jumped straight on it, and within 48 hours, I'd recreated my own pictures. And you can find these on the internet. So there's Iska surrounded by Seabrook crisps, and there's me surrounded in my crisps. And I used that shot and that publicity and got that disruptive guerrilla marketing back in action, and that's how I launched my business. I decided that as my journey had been so hellish, I was going to help other entrepreneurs who wanted to launch their own food brand. And Iska retweeted to this photo to 2 million followers, and that's how I launched my business. So now I'm a food consultant and mentor, and I went on to write a book about my journey, about how to launch a food business without selling your soul. And I was delighted to get that to bestseller status. My book's called The Winning Mix, and it's a bestseller, and it's got over 55-star reviews on Amazon, and it's also a finalist in the Business Book Awards. But just like I was saying in the food brand journey, things had started to take their toll, and things had been breathlessly difficult at some point in that journey, and I was still sitting on all of this stress and strain and pressure, and there were still strains and stresses and pressures personally for us in our lives of what all of this has created and the aftermath of some of this. So my release from that was to take up swimming. Now, I'd always been a keen pool swimmer, but I needed more. I wanted to take up open water swimming. So I found a local open water swimming group, and I went to a couple of events. I trained how to, you know, the funny thing is, in the pool, I was super confident, but in the open water, I was scared of everything. I was scared of putting my face in the water. I was scared of not being able to see the bottom. I was scared of not being in a box sort of thing, and having no lines and things like that. Anyway, it didn't take long for the cold water swimming bug to completely engulf me, and I absolutely loved it. And this was my way of releasing the stress. So I did a few events, and then I went along to my local swimming group, and I overheard a conversation one day where they were talking to people about trying out to get into a team to swim the English Channel. So I managed to get myself into that team, and I trained for a good year, passed the medical, passed all the tests and everything, the qualifier. And yeah, we swum the English Channel on the 3rd of June 2018 in 15 hours and 6 minutes. And that swim taught me so much about myself, about how to overcome self-limiting beliefs, how to pull on every single resource I had, mentally, physically, emotionally, how to not stop challenging myself all the time. I also overcame hypothermia when we were on the boat. Another story indeed. But in the same way that in my business consultancy business now, then, just in the same way that I'd learned on the Scrubbies journey, when the fun goes, the passion dies. And I'd started getting not as passionate about this business, and I wanted to do more. I wanted to expand and pivot my business. So that's what I did last year. In the middle of the pandemic, I decided that I was going to expand, and I underwent some rigorous training to become a coach. And that's what I did. I actually passed my exam this last weekend. So I'm now a trained, accredited ICF International Coaching Federation coach. And my area that I work in is high performance for women, both in their business and in their lives. So I'm not sure where I am on timings. I've maybe rabbited far too fast, or even maybe gone on too long. But before I leave this virtual stage, just let me leave you with this quote, which I love. J.K. Rowling said that anything is possible if you've got enough nerve. And I really, really believe that. So let's always, always have enough nerve and choose to challenge our thoughts, our minds, our bodies, our beliefs, and not allow others to set the agenda on what we can achieve. Let's all go for our dreams. I challenged my body recovering from the PE and swimming the channel, and this winter breaking ice to swim in 0-degree water. I challenged my mind. Yes, I can achieve big things, even though I've only got a handful of GCSEs. And I've pushed my body when my mind has said that I can't do it. Challenge my beliefs. We're never too old to adapt, change and grow. So let's not allow others' beliefs of what they think is possible to deter us from going after what we want. How on earth do we know what we're capable of, what limits we can break if we never choose to challenge ourselves? So if you've enjoyed listening to me today, please do pop over onto social media and we can continue our chat over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. That was amazing. I was just some of the notes I was writing down as you were talking there, and some of those fantastic little sound bites as well that I think we can all kind of use and live by. But the thing that really struck me was that your perseverance is incredible. I think most people would have just kind of, hit the wall and just and given up, but you haven't done that and you've kept going, and it's amazing. Massively well done on that as well. So thank you for kicking us off as well. It's not the easy spot to have the first one, so thanks for taking that challenge as well. So following Claire is a woman who has forged a very niche place for herself in the local and national business world. She's a leading female face in the world of hospitality, a former celebrity and a fashion stylist as well, and a branding social media expert. Please welcome Managing Director of Healing Manor Hotel, Charlotte Bennett.
Thank you. I think you meant former celebrity stylist. It's my husband. It's my husband that's arrogant enough to call himself a celebrity.
He's not here, so we'll go with you.
Yeah, his band. But yeah, thank you so much. So I currently run with my husband and business partner Steve, Healing Manor Hotel, which is set just on the edge of Grimsby. And for anybody that isn't directly local, we definitely fluff it up as the edge of the Lincolnshire Wolds. It sounds much nicer. And we also run the Lincolnshire Chef, which is an outside catering company and lifestyle brand. And I also dabble as a food stylist. Oh, sorry. So our core focus is working with like-minded suppliers, growers, producers, manufacturers and businesses based in seasonal menus across the board. We also have a focus on brand and business collaborations, working with companies that basically target the same market but offer a different product. And we also have this real passion for trying to upskill the next generation and really, showcasing that hospitality can be a great career path, and working on bridging that gap between education and industry. So I won't harp on too much about the past 12 months, as I think we're probably all quite keen for it to be a distant memory. But I wanted to start on this point because I think it really showcases the path of my interpretation of rising to challenges. How can we rise to them, and how can we use challenges for the best and a better outcome? So our challenges over the past 12 months haven't just been in business, but personal too. Steve and I were actually due to get married in May 2020 in Italy, followed with a pretty spectacular wedding for about 400 at the Manor in July. So flip back to the 31st of December 2019, just before I managed to slip over on ice as I was gritting the paths in front of around 300 people at 1 minute past midnight, ironically as we welcomed in 2020. At which point I managed to dislocate and break my elbow and rupture 2 tendons in my arm. We were actually debating plans for a very last minute intimate family wedding on the 1st of February, as my dad had been diagnosed a few months earlier with stage 4 cancer. He was undergoing treatment at the time, and the consultant had said that if we could move the wedding forward, then we should. So we started off planning, we started off 2020 planning the most intimate wedding with broken bones and pretty much 5 weeks to go. we were so lucky in the fact that we had the most incredible day and managed to tie the knot before lockdown hit. I did joke with my dad that it was his fault that I had 5 months less to change my mind about marrying Stephen Bennett, and I think for any of you that do know him, you'll know what I mean about that one. So we went on to enter the 22nd of March, not just with fear, but a real instinctive survival mode. We had thousands of pounds worth of ingredients for the hundreds of Mother's Day bookings, which had been cancelled with hours notice. So we reactively offered the most unorganised takeaway menu going, but somehow got through it. And whilst Steve and I are sponges to knowledge, we had like so many plans in place when COVID hit. But our biggest fear was, how would we support our family and how would we support our team? So when the Chancellor announced the furlough scheme, this like huge weight was just lifted off our shoulders, and we knew that it gave us some headspace to make the best decisions we could, not just to protect our business, but like our sanity as well. So we made the decision to offer takeaways from the get-go, and at that point it was like a very unsaturated market. So we were able to turn over close to £10,000 each week just on takeaways, with like 3 to 4 of us working. We were also super lucky that our site is like really spread, so kept our bedrooms open for key workers. And whilst this wasn't stopping our losses, it did mean that our losses were minimal. So with my dad's prognosis being less than 2 months to live, just a few weeks into lockdown, keeping the business running at a stupidly fast pace and justifying our stock drinking for, as market research definitely helped us on an emotional level during this time. So sadly, we lost my dad 3 weeks later in May, and still actually haven't been able to have a proper funeral for him today. But I quite literally think he probably thought, sod it, not staying around to be locked in the house. So the experience that my mum and dad had during lockdown 1, like really made us focus on the huge amount of people that were out there that couldn't get to the shops, didn't have support circles, and, you know, couldn't even get slots for online food deliveries. So we launched our Nominate Your Neighbour campaign, started feeding key workers, became the chefs for St Andrew's Hospice, provided meals for those in our local village, and provided thousands of free meals and care packages for We Are One Foundation. We actually managed to raise an incredible £24,000 thanks to everybody's donations to support the purchase of the raw ingredients. So whilst we had the people power and family support, where we would normally feed the local homeless with food waste still fit for human consumption from the restaurant, that overspill just wasn't there with the takeaway menu. So flip forward to January this year, and after now running a takeaway business for almost 12 months, I remember consciously making the time to be like more proactive and forward planning with educated guesses to the patterns of lockdowns, consumer behaviour, economic impacts, and like future government announcements. And as well as strategically forward planning for our business, I really started to become intrigued and to take interest into where my reactive instincts to rise into the challenges of COVID and this past year of personal traumas had come from. And I guess this is where I flipped back to my school and college years. So I attended healing schools, which were both very academic focused and pretty much wrapped us up in cotton wool. And whilst common sense and hard work is something that I learned from my parents, and in particular my dad, who was very literal with his black and white health and safety background, although I do prefer grey and every colour option in between. I then went on to study A-levels at Franklin College. So naturally, I started off studying academic subjects, as that was what I knew. But weeks in, I realised that subjects such as like graphics and textiles were like an actual thing. So much to my parents' horror, I dropped maths and took up textiles. I actually ended up having to resit my first year of A-levels, as a very close friend of mine tragically got run over and killed like literally outside of college on the morning of our first day of exams. So I ended up studying A-levels for 3 years, came out with a toughened black heart, A-levels in psychology, textiles, art and graphics. And at the point of finishing, I remember like not knowing what I actually wanted to do, but I knew what I enjoyed. So went on to do an art foundation year next door at Westwood Ho. I then moved to the big bright lights of London, attending London College of Fashion, studying fashion design and marketing. And I always remember like quite literally 2 weeks of living in London, like absolutely loving the city. I love the buzz of it, I love the culture, but most of all, I love the anonymity and being able to discover who I was as a person without the judgment I received for being a 6'1" girl back home in Grimsby. Fortunately, I think going to university 2 years later than society tells us that we should really helped me get the best out of the opportunity. So quite ironically, after studying for almost 2 years, I'd fallen out of love with my course and just completely lost interest, so I quit. I remember sat with my friend Colin and we were talking about the possibility of me moving back home for a year, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, save some money, and then look to move back to London. And it was in that conversation that he decided to tell me that his sister Angie Smith was a freelance fashion stylist and she was looking for an assistant. So my initial reaction was, how have we been friends for 2 years and you've not thought to tell me this? But anyway, went on to have a chat with Ange, and at the time she was looking for someone to do a 4-week placement. So the first day into working with her, we were on set, I think probably 6 a.m. Saturday morning at a studio in Islington, and we were shooting at JLS for a cover shoot. And at that time, I'd followed their journey on X Factor, had this real pinch me moment as I was asking Marvin to take his clothes off. And on the Addison Lee journey home, I remember saying to Angie, like, how is this work? So we'd really hit it off and quickly realised that our styles were quite similar. And after 3 weeks, she asked me to join her on a freelance but full-time basis as her assistant. I think I must have been about 22 at this point, so like quite young in that kind of high pressure world. And having just given up the lease on my flat, and she gave me the keys to her studio flat, rather nicely overlooking Clapham Common South Side, and said that I could move in there. I'd unknowingly thrown myself into this world that most girls wanting to work in fashion would class as their dream job. I'm sure many of you have watched Devil Wears Prada, and there's a moment when Anne Hathaway's character picks up Miranda Priestley's phone to take a message, and the entry line is, how do you spell Gabbana? And like, this was quite literally my life for a good 2 to 3 years. If I got asked something, I just said yes and then figured it out afterwards. I Googled everything and asked a lot of questions. I remember after a PR company had hung up on me after incorrectly pronouncing Roxanda Ilanishi, like Googling and watching YouTube videos on how to correctly pronounce designers' names, just so we could at least get through to the PR and ask to borrow the clothes. I very quickly learned, away from the parties, the London Fashion Weeks, the free gifts of bags and jewellery, and this like really fun creative side, that there was a real poignant business and strategic element to being a fashion stylist. Not just, it's not just about creating beautiful looks, but it's about understanding the brief. It's about building strong relationships, but it's also about understanding the PR agent or designer's target demographic as well. You know, Chanel isn't going to lend clothes to a footballer's wife, as their fans aren't deemed as Chanel's target audience. However, I just had to ask the question so I could go back to the client and say, sorry, it was a no. There was, of course, the off chance that certain designers would say yes to certain requests, and, maybe they were exploring new ways to reach new markets. So subconsciously, at a very young age, I was learning all of these business skills in a very real and high pressure setting. I quickly learned that one of the tricks to keeping the client happy, where PRs wouldn't lend clothes, was maxing out our business credit cards, trying to source the outfits from Selfridges, Harrods or Harvey Nicks. And the strategy behind this was that they had a 30-day refund policy, whereas the designer stores were exchange only. So we quite literally had white ring binder folders with plastic wallets and waltz into Selfridges, buy my nice £3,000 dress, carefully peel out the label tag and pop it into the plastic wallet with the receipt in chronological return order. The client would then wear the outfit, whether it was on the red carpet, TV, or a fashion shoot. We'd then get the outfit professionally dry cleaned, check for any stitching issues, and then we had one of those tag guns that you have in a shop, and we'd literally carefully like pierce the tag back onto the dress as if it had never been worn. I would then waltz back into Selfridges, ask for my £3,000 refund, as the size 6 dress clearly didn't fit me, and I'd receive a funny look or two from the shop assistant. But you know, this was a very kind of strategic and like common sense approach to how we would keep the clients happy. So without realizing it, like I had become hardened to this like the word no and this idea of rejection. Like I would just keep on asking the question, as for every 50 no's there'd be 5 yeses. And I think the like fallacy theory for this is around like marginal gains. So it's about looking at those smaller wins rather than focusing on this idea of like the big picture and, you know, this big idea of failure. So during my time as a stylist at Angie, I got to work with some of the most incredible creatives. I helped style the likes of Nigella Lawson, Holly Willoughby, Kristen Wiig, Caroline Flack, Kelly Hoppen, Jennifer Hudson, Miranda Hart, Laura Whitmore, amongst like many, many others. I was a part of Danny Minogue's team on her last series as a judge on The X Factor and for Autobiography. I styled Christine for Dancing on Ice, This Morning, The One Show, and I kind of worked on editorial pieces featured in worldwide magazines. As I started to mature, thanks to my slightly older circle of friends, my eyes really started to open to the madness of this like incredible world I was working in. I'd collect millions of pounds worth of diamonds, sign them out of the Bond Street store and waltz home on the bus or tube with them slung in my bag and probably hidden between a lipstick, Oyster card and tampon or two. A PR quite literally like once asked me to ask Danny not to clap too roughly on the live show of The X Factor, just in case the £15 million emerald and diamond ring crumbled on her finger, just because their insurance would uncover that. So without even knowing it, I had become so resilient to this like fear of rejection and failure. And when I say resilience, like, yes, on occasions I gazed and still gaze at a blank wall for hours, or sit in a dark room and cry a little bit. But I think in more recent years, probably since I've had a much larger financial and people responsibility above paying my extortionate London rent, I've learned the art of the concept that if you don't fail or experience rejection, then you're never going to be able to learn and develop your skill sets. So a few years into working as a stylist, I realised that I was getting stressed out over a pair of Jimmy Choos that cost more than a month's rent. And I decided that this like incredible mad world I was living in wasn't my real world. So moved back home to healing. So during those past years, I set up a business with my best friend at the time, Paris. So we launched Stella and Alf, which Paris now runs as Stealth. My biggest learning curve that whilst going into business with your best friend can be incredible, it can also be very tough. And around the time of our business separation, I met Steve. And for the first time in my life, not only did I commit to someone for more than 3 dates, I met someone who saw my truest and biggest potentials, and we've basically lived and worked together for the past 7 years. Quick note on that, I can definitely say that being in business with your husband, particularly Steve, isn't any easier, and I'm sure Alexis will vouch for that comment after experiencing his behaviour. But during that time, we have launched lifestyle brands. We've worked with global brands such as Mercedes, Penguin Books, Beatrix Potter. I said yes to being a food stylist before I even knew what one was. Definitely Googled that one as well. And whilst I'm trying to find a little bit more time to do this alongside running the Manor, I've already worked as a food stylist on the rebrand for TUI. More recently started working with Real Homes magazine and had work and recipes featured across local and national glosses. So now we have established that a lot of hard work, asking questions, a little common sense, and becoming resilient to rejection and this idea of failure, and pretty much Googling my way through life has gotten me so far. What I've learned over the past 3 years, and still learning now, is that surrounding yourself by people that are far, far better than you in specialist areas is the only way to grow. So many people that I've met in life and find themselves in maybe like senior director level or leadership positions, who are very driven, have often experienced some sort of trauma or sadness, which I think has like ultimately and perhaps subconsciously spurred us into action. I've gone from working for myself and by myself my whole working career to employing over 50 people at the age of 30. And that's not something that any book or anyone kind of teaches you or prepares you for. I do, however, like refer back to this quote that I read by Julietta Dexter in Forbes. So she is the CEO of the Communication Store, which is an incredible PR company in London. And she said that to be a great business owner and entrepreneur, that you just need to be a great all-rounder. And I remember processing like her rather flippant statement and thought, wait a minute, like this is me to a T. I've always battled with my creative and strategic brain. It might be the other way around, but I don't know. And it wasn't until I read this quote that it really struck a chord and made me realise that if I was going to succeed in running a multi-million-pound business of size, that I needed to surround myself with the best people in the specific areas. So whilst I've managed to teach myself accounts on a multi-million-pound level, I've taken great photographs on my iPhone and had them featured in editorials. I've created websites, run 20 plus social media accounts at one time, made the best margarita go in and work well both behind but better in front of a bar, written for magazines, understand the mathematics behind our room revenue strategy, have the ability to lead on sales, I can run a restaurant service, and in the past 12 months I've learned that I can fry some fish and chips and flip some burgers in volume. Ultimately, like I know there's people out there who are far, far better than I am in all of these areas. So I think to wrap up my speech, my advice would be aware of your circles of influence, like focus on what you can achieve and kind of like really embrace your failures, to absolutely embrace opportunities and like put yourself in front of them. I think after experiencing that whole cycle of trauma and loss in my teenage years, I very quickly flipped from this mindset of, oh, you know, things just happen for a reason, to realizing that most of the time things happen because we carve our own pathways and like create our own opportunities. But finally, like completely surround yourself with like warm and kind souls and those who are content in their own skill sets. And once I was going to list some of those people, I know I'm close to time. So on International Women's Day on Monday, I'll be giving like lots and lots of shout outs throughout the day to some of like the incredible people that I get to work with now, you know, and in particular women from Lincolnshire. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to the panel discussion later.
Thank you, Charlotte. That was amazing. That was great to hear about all of that as well. I know we work together quite closely, so it's been lovely to see you kind of present those ideas and those thoughts as well. Some of the things that really resonated for me, well, first of all, being 6'1" and I'm 6 foot, so I can relate to that and feeling like you kind of that anonymity in London, but also just again about that sense of resilience. But I think it links in very much to what Claire was saying too about taking risks and putting yourself out there, and you know, kind of seeing how far you can push yourself as well, and being surprised by how far you can push yourself. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. It's been brilliant. So the next speaker we have coming up, we have a very own Wonder Woman. My girls are very excited about this. So we've got Jenny Pacey. Not only is Jenny a former Olympian and a gladiator, yes, from that TV show, but she's also a local lass and is one of the top female personal trainers in the world. She's just trained the Amazons and Hollywood star Kristen Wiig for the blockbuster movie Wonder Woman 1984. So we're very excited to see her. Please welcome Jenny Pace.
Hello everybody, I'm Jenny Pacey, and I'd like to start with that Wonder Woman is not a fictional character, it's a mindset. And by that I mean it's how we all show up in the world. It's the energy that we bring to the challenges that we choose, it's how we make other people feel, and it's how we all feel inside. And we all share a very special superpower. We are all women. And we've all come together because we really enjoy the special Wonder Woman moments in life. Sometimes they're the big ones, like when you get your dream job. And then there's the little ones that you can give yourself every single day. So I'd like you all to join me and just stand up. And then sit back down. And then stand back up. And then sit back down. Just one more. Breathe in as you come out. Breathe out as you come down. Amazing. So I've just given you all a little shot of endorphins. Every day I work out because it makes me feel like the better version of myself. And I also turned on your fat burning enzymes that have turned off because we've been sat down for more than 20 minutes. And today my speech is about the adventure that has been my life, how to create the Wonder Woman mindset, and how we can all have more of those Wonder Woman moments in our everyday life. I'm going to take you back to the beginning, when I was a little girl on the start line of the 100-meter sprint at Lingmore Primary School. I want you to bear in mind, I'd been training for about a month with my granddad in the garden for this moment. I remember the gun going off, sprinting, feeling that flow state that only comes with movement. I remember being super nervous I might trip, but then suddenly I was passing people, and then it was all over and I had won. I'd managed to even beat all the boys at my primary school. And this was my first feeling of the Wonder Woman moment and my first association with growth mindset. I associated the fact I'd worked really hard and been determined and consistent and then created the outcome that I was looking for. And this moment also started my love of sport and movement. And my poor parents took me to a different sports club every night of the week, from gymnastics to dancing to horse riding to swimming to athletics, every night of the week and the weekends. And really sport and movement fueled my ambition as a little girl. And I remember running around my garden, hurdling the rabbit hutches, because one day I dreamed of competing in the Olympics. And on a Saturday night, do you remember the show Gladiators with Jet and Hunter? I used to beat my brother and sister up with pillows from the sofa and imagine being Jet and imagine marrying Hunter, who is now bald and not as attractive as I used to think he was. I was also happy to say I was a show off, and I dreamed of being an actress or on TV or a model or a presenter. And when I was 12, my grandfather took me to my first international athletics match at Loughborough University. And it was there that I got to see my idols in action. There was Olympians like Colin Jackson and Elizabeth Christie and Sally Gunnell. And I was absolutely mesmerized and amazed by the lycra, the bodies, but also the speed, the strength, the power, the determination, and the type of humans these people had become on the track because of their desire to be the best that they could be in the sport that they loved. And at this point at 12, I realized I couldn't be an elite athlete at 12 different sports. So I narrowed my training down to just training for athletics. And I used to still horse ride for fun because I love it. It's my joy in life. And I went to Loughborough University to do my sports science degree. And it was here that my world really opened. I got a new coach, a training partner. I trained in the best facilities in the world. I was surrounded by elite athletes, Olympians, and the only way for me to go was higher, bigger, better. I trained 6 days a week. I trained for 4 to 5 hours a day. And I got my first call up from Great Britain to represent my country in pentathlon. And I think everything's for a reason, and our lives and worlds are all connected. And if I hadn't been an athlete at Lincoln Wellington Athletics Club, where they didn't have too many girls my age, And they drafted me into all the different disciplines, from like long jump to high jump to shot put to javelin. And that really started my career as a heptathlete and a multi-eventer. And then I went on to represent Great Britain in pentathlon and in long jump. And at Loughborough Uni, I learned the first part of my Wonder Woman mindset, and that was the grow and glow. So in terms of growth, I realized that human ability can be developed through hard work and dedication, and that actually failure was only an opportunity to learn and grow, and that none of us are fixed. It doesn't matter where we came from, where we started, what we were born with enough perseverance and dedication, you can be anything that you wish to be. And the glow mindset comes from, you know, when you see the athletes run through the 100-meter finish line at the Olympics and they throw their arms in the air. This is actually part of the power pose sequence, and it increases your feeling of confidence and reduces your feelings of stress. And I used to watch all my friends running through the line, throwing their arms in the air, or do some as well. And it filled me with joy. It boosted my energy. And I think when you see an athlete doing, or anybody doing what they love doing, they are ignited and full of light. And I decided at that point, I was only going to do in my life the things that made me glow and filled me with energy and joy. And this takes me on to when I turned 22. And the next part of my adventure was when I got a call from the Great British Bobsleigh team. And they asked me if I would like to go to Canada to the World Championships to trial to be a bobslayer. I was like, yes. Because apparently the skills of speed, strength, power as an athlete transferred really well into the sport of bobsleigh, and they were recruiting some new athletes. So I flew to Canada, and I had 3 weeks of on-ice training and then a week of trials, and I beat everybody else, and the World Championships was my first race. And has anybody watched Cool Runnings? This should give you an idea of what I had to deal with in bobsleigh. There was a Jamaican team. I got myself a lucky egg. There is a mile of ice. And for women, there's a driver in the front and a brake woman at the back. And I was the brake woman, so the engine behind the sled. I'd sprint out behind the bobsleigh for 20 to 30 meters, long jump in, stick my head between my knees, pray we wouldn't crash, count the bends as you fly down a mile of ice at 90 miles an hour with no seatbelts, and then pull the brakes on at the end to brake the bobsleigh. Now, with your head between your legs and at 90 miles an hour, bobsleighers experience up to 6 G-forces, which is greater than one would feel in Formula One. And some people actually wet themselves in the back of the bobsleigh. Now, I hasten to add, I was never one of those people, but after my first season, I learned to drive the bobsleigh, which was much safer and drier in the front seat. And I got to compete for many years, traveling snowy parts of the world for Great Britain. My personal favorite place was St. Moritz, where they made the track out of giant ice cubes that they would bring and create a natural track down the mountain. And we also used to hang out with Prince Albert in Monaco, which was great fun. And then you'd get sent to places like Eastern Bloc Germany, to Altenburg, where the track was nicknamed Alten Smash because it was made of concrete with ice at the bottom. And if you crashed there, you would suffer terrible ice burns by being rubbed across the ice or the concrete at 90 miles an hour. So it wasn't all Prince Albert and Champagne, there were some terrible times. And from bobsleighing, I was part of the 2006 Olympic team, but I was a reserve. So it was a super bittersweet moment. It was an ambition I had from a child. I nearly got there. I came back to England, had just finished all of my qualifications at Loughborough, had nowhere to live, and I had a real low point in life and a crossroads. And I decided, I'm going to move to London. I'll pack my car, drive down. I moved in with my ex-boyfriend's best friend just to get my feet on the ground and start to pursue my ambitions in television, media, and go back to long jumping and athletics. So my first month in London, 22, and I went on a date with my now fiance, Wayne, and I got offered a job as a sports scientist at Nuffield. And this job was really great. It was a great salary. It was in central London. There was a pension. There was a career pathway. And it absolutely filled me with fear that it was going to create a ceiling above my head, that a salary was a bad thing because it wouldn't ignite the fire in me. And it just frightened me to be that safe, and it didn't make me glow inside. So I declined the job, and I ended up setting up a business called Pace and Go with my partner, which we still have. It's a fitness business. I got my first job in television as a presenter on a Sky One stunt show called Mission Implausible, where we traveled the country doing crazy stunts and girls versus boys, and the girls often beat the boys. This is a theme I enjoy. I also got a couple of modeling agents, and I've now been photographed for Vogue and then super brands, including Visa, Adidas, and Tampax. And then I got the job as Gladiator Enigma. And I believe that in life, life is really coloured by our relationships and the people we have around us. And my old housemate at Loughborough Uni was the accountant at Sky One. She called me and she was like, Pacey. Everyone called me Pacey at uni because I was fast. That's my surname. It's like, Pacey, Gladiators is coming back. I think you and Wayne would be amazing. And we ended up both getting an audition where you did 10 different physical challenges, from weightlifting to medicine ball throwing to sprinting to obstacle courses. And you got scored between a 1 and a 10 for your ability. And at the end of the day, when they had trialed hundreds of people, they called my name out first because I had got the highest score of any man or woman on the day. I got through to the second round of trials where they did personality profiling and some wrestling and different other physical skills. And I think because I look like a moody Victoria Beckham when I've got my game face on and I'm in competition, they decided to make me Enigma, mysterious and deceptively powerful, and the badass bitch of the Gladiators. So I had a couple of years covered in rhinestones, taking on contenders, doing hang tough, doing the wall. Do you all remember Wolf from the original Glads in the 90s? So I used to go to him and be like, how do I be meaner on stage? He was like, you tickle Bianca Gascoigne in hang tough. That will make everyone remember that game. And he now actually owns a daycare centre in New Zealand, which I find ironic. So I was a gladiator, and this really takes me to the next and final chapter of my life, when I turned 30. And at this point, I retired from competitive sports, and I had a phone call from my agent a few months later, and she was like, Teddy, would you like to audition for a Hollywood blockbuster movie? They're not telling us what it is, but they're looking for strong, athletic females. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm up for this challenge. So I went to 4 auditions and 2 boot camps, and then I got the role as an Amazon in Wonder Woman. Now, Wonder Woman's power pose is hands on the hips, and my Gladiator Enigma pose happened to be hands on the hips, chin in the air, and a pout on my face, so not too far removed. And I found out that if you put your hands on your hips and you stand in this manner for 2 minutes a day, you actually change your hormone balance. So you boost your testosterone levels and you reduce your cortisol levels, which are linked to stress. So whenever I'm in a situation, I put on my power pose and let my hormones balance. I did that a little bit before today's speech. So with that in mind, I had the auditions. I got the role as an Amazon. We did 8 months training at Warner Brothers. And there was weightlifting, sprint training. They bulked us up. And there was also stunt training. So we would do swords and shields and learn how to fire bow and arrows and become the ultimate Amazon army. And we went out to Italy and we filmed for a month all the beautiful scenes that you see at the beginning of the first Wonder Woman movie. And it was the most incredible experience. And not long after the first film came out, I was asked by a friend if I would go to a Comic-Con opening at the O2 Arena. And it was for her housemate who had a PR company. And they wanted to interview me about my experiences in Amazon in the first film. And there was no fee for this. There was no taxi. It was the middle of winter and it was a Monday morning. So there was a lot of ingredients there, which would make me think, do I want to do this? But I always think no opportunity comes from a no, and you never know what can happen when you say yes. So I went to the Comic-Con, and the first person I bumped into was a lady called Anna. And she was the producer from the first Wonder Woman film. She's like, hey, Jenny, how are you doing? Amazing to see you. And she briefed us on what we could say in our interviews and what to stay away from. She's like, how are you doing since the film? And I was like, oh, the film was life-changing. It was such an incredible experience. And I've learned that my new superpower is helping other people find their superpower. So within my business Pace and Go, we've got 100 online workouts, and they're from beginners to the advanced athlete. So everybody can work out with us. We started doing Super You workshops in schools and corporately to help people be the best they could be, both internally and externally when it came to health, fitness, and wellness. I was also a consultant for Andre Agassi. I was traveling the world as a master trainer, and life was really good. And she's like, wow, that's amazing. And it happened that she went back to the Warner Brothers office that afternoon, and Patty Jenkins, who's the director for the film, said, I'm going to find a female trainer for the second movie. Move away from the men trainers. Let's get a female in. And Anna went, Jenny Pacey, wouldn't she be perfect? She was an elite athlete. She was a sports scientist. She was a gladiator. She's trained celebrities. And she was in the first film, so she knows what to expect. So an interview later, and I got the job. I'm the first woman in the world to be a lead trainer for a Hollywood movie and train an army of women for a movie. And I had a very unique opportunity to not only train Kristen Wiig as the lead villain Cheetah, but to also train the Amazon army for the opening scenes of the second film. And I had a unique challenge because I had a Victoria's Secret model, an Olympian, a mum of 3, a ballerina that had never weight trained before, and a host of stunt women and different ladies from all different backgrounds. And when I spoke to Patty, we created this idea there would be a beautiful, athletic, aesthetic army of women that moved with the same flow state, but were in competition together. So I created a training program for 4 months. Then all the girls would peak perfectly for the Amazon Olympics in terms of their aesthetics, their speed, their strength, their power, and their movement patterns. On Monday, we did metabolic conditioning. Tuesday, we did more dance and gymnastics. Wednesday was Olympic lifting, followed by track and field. Thursday was more of our active recovery with yoga, meditation, and stick mobility. And then Friday was a hardcore weight training and athletic session so they could recover over the weekend. And I always remember on the first day in the studio at the gym, I wrote on a board, let's inspire the world with our beauty and determination. Let's sprint like Olympians. Let's move with the grace of dancers and the agility of gymnasts. And I think that really translated through the women in the film. As I mentioned, I also trained Kristen Wiig, that you might remember from Bridesmaids. And she's seen as more of the skinny, funny girl, and I helped transform her into the apex predator Cheetah. And we worked together for a whole 9 months. And we filmed in London and Washington, and with the girls, the Amazons, that we filmed in London and then Fuerteventura. And then on top of those 2 jobs, Patty asked if I'd be an Amazon again in the second film. So I also got to star sprinting up a giant waterfall at the beginning of the film. And this really brings me to the end of my speech. Seems to have gone so quickly. That every day I wake up and I smile. I read a lovely quote from Mother Teresa that said, peace always starts with a smile. And with all the energy I create, I try and balance it with as much peace as I can find as well. And the first thought that I have is today is going to be an amazing day. And I'd like you to all join me and just put your fists in the air in my first power pose. And always remember to grow and to glow and do what you love. And remember, there are no limits. And then if we put our hands on our hips in the Wonder Woman pose, and remember that if you do this for 2 minutes a day, you'll boost your feeling of confidence and power and reduce your feeling of stress. And then finally, give yourselves a big hug. This is called superhero self-care, and it's how I finish every single one of my workouts. And remember that the Wonder Woman mindset starts with the Wonder Women that we are in here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. That was amazing. I was just thinking that's 2 minutes a day. I need to book in to make sure I do my Wonder Woman pose so that I have a cracking day. Thanks. I absolutely love the idea of that Wonder Woman mindset and kind of tapping into your own, superpowers really, and just being able to kind of help yourself in that way. Fantastic ideas, and I think there'll be a lot of people taking things. There's loads in the chat about what people think about that, so you'll have to have a look. So thank you for taking the time to do that.
I got so excited, I forgot to put this on.
I did challenge you to put that on. Brilliant, thank you ever so much. Now I'm conscious of time because we had a feeling this would happen, but so we're going to move on to our next speaker without any further ado. So our fourth and final speaker, she's so incredibly positive and life affirming. Many of you will know of Jane Means through her gift wrapping and ribbon stationery. But outside of her professional career, which sees her train and work with royalty, celebrities and luxurious brands such as Dior, for example, Jane is a survivor. Please welcome Jane to the stage.
Thank you, Alexis. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm always so grateful to the people of Lincolnshire because they helped me kickstart my career. So a little bit about me and my business. I have a gift wrapping company named after my own name, Jane Means. I do a lot of courses around the UK and the world, but I do a lot of corporate training. So I will train brands such as Fortnum & Mason. I did a big thing for Selfridges last year, Dior, Harrods, to name a few. I also do gift wrapping services predominantly in London because that's where the work is, about 20 crew. So we've been wrapping for the Golden Globes this week. I also design my own product range, which are online and they're stocked in various shops like Fortnum's and Phoenix, etc. And then I've got a little bit more specialised. So I deal with sort of consulting and designing. So for instance, I've helped Aqua de Parma. How do they wrap something in their circular boxes without using tissue? Right through to Dior asking me to go to Paris, tough life, to design a single bow, and you've probably seen that bow on shoes of Dior. So I'm now doing a lot of specialist work as well as filming. I do a lot of press events as well, so I've had some great clients from sort of oldie to Cox & Cox, Estee Lauder, La Mer. I mean, I can go on and on with my wonderful clients. And then I do a lot of sort of in-store workshops, demonstrations, and things like team building events have been really popular this Christmas. So I've been busy doing Zoom events with people like Interflora, TikTok, Google in California. I had to actually set my alarm at night because of the time difference in LA to do this event. And I'm also a key speaker like I am today. But my business started really from a dream, and people, including my father, said, Jane, it will never work. And that was my greatest thing to get me going. I started a business from the kitchen table, making handmade greeting cards back in 1995. My passion was wrapping. Nobody did it, and those who did were rubbish, quite frankly. So I started with a bit of floristry and a bit of creativity, started running workshops at my parents' watermill between Lincoln and Sleaford. I then started doing them in London, Country Living Fair. It was such a long time ago. I used to advertise in the back of the magazine because there was no internet then. It was that long ago when I started my business. And I'm always very grateful to Lincolnshire Press. Some of you are here today. Thank you, because you really helped me, get me off the ground, and I'm forever grateful. I found through my life I haven't been taken seriously, and it was lovely that several years ago I sat at a dinner and a gentleman said to me, Jane, I'm a friend of your father's, and I was a big critic, and I was one of those people who said, you won't succeed. Well done. And that's always stuck with me ever since. I think I've got loads of stories and pinch me moments, so many, but I think one of my biggest ones was I'm a Lincolnshire lass, and I was living in Lincoln at the time, and I flew out to Milan to work for Dior and just thought, oh my goodness. And I was so nervous. They picked me up, took me to the boutique. I was sweating. I was so nervous. And then Liberty in London asked me to go into their windows and do a live performance, if you want to call it that, demonstration. They locked me into a window for an hour and a half, sorry. And if you go to London and go to the Liberties, you'll see their windows are really high. and I made the big mistake of wearing a short skirt. So I daren't move. I was literally like a dummy in the window talking, trying to rap. And there were all flashbulbs going off, etc. And then I've also done quite a bit of TV work, and that's, you know, that's quite interesting. And some of the other speakers have spoken about TV, but I remember going on This Morning once, and there I was in makeup with Philip Schofield, Lorraine Kelly and Paul Burrell chatting about VAT on biscuits, and you just think, you know, is that really happening? But I think, you know, the moment that gave me goosebumps was I was in New York, and there was my work. I designed this bow for Dior. There it was on a billboard, and I thought, oh my goodness. You know, I think back to Branston School. What would my teachers think if they saw this now? And you know, I've also been a speaker in Canada for the TJ Maxx empire out there, and you know, so I've had some incredible opportunities, and so grateful that I'm still going. I also launched a book. It was several years ago. It's in the background here. You'll see it. I had 3 book launches, and I remember somebody saying, "Jane, you're now an author," and I thought, oh my goodness, I am. Amazing. And you know, it's just great that they still sell to this day, and I've done events in Singapore and Australia, and I am really passionate about local bookstores and buying local, not buying from the big giant online. So I'm very passionate about that, and I'm very passionate about people in business and starting businesses, and also working with smaller businesses, trying to keep them going. You know, we've supplied people with ribbons who are really struggling, and we'll say, right, we'll send you some wrapped boxes with some ribbons, pop them in the window, pop a little graphic in, you know, with some ideas. And you know, it's just great if you can help others out. I've also had sort of problems, I suppose, with my career as well. It hasn't all been plain sailing, and I had my ribbon made in the UK. I try and get everything British made where I can. That is the biggest question I find now when we're at a trade show exhibiting. It used to be what's the minimum order, and now it's where is it made or where does it come from. But I, you know, unfortunately I had my ribbon copied by my manufacturer in Cheshire, and it ended up being a legal case, which I did win. And on the back of that, I decided to be an ambassador for ACID. It's anti-copying in design. So, you know, a lot of people on Instagram and social media will contact me now saying, I've had, you know, one of my products blatantly copied. What do I do? And you know, it's just been great, but it is frustrating when you are faced with being copied. Even this week, you know, some of my images have been on Instagram where we've had to say, you know, they've got to come down. And you know, I always say, you know, just you've got to use your own ideas, and you know, an original is the best. Challenges I've also faced was 2 years ago. I didn't feel terribly well, and I went off to the doctors and just didn't feel too good at all. I'd come back from Australia, and within an hour I was in A&E having 2 bags of blood, a blood transfusion, and I was really at death's door. And the following day in Lincoln Hospital, who were fantastic, by the way, I just happened to see, after one of those cameras down your throat, I can never remember what you call it, but I saw cancer on my notes, and my whole world just came to a massive stop. And it said GIST, and I had no idea what GIST cancer was. And after a bit of Googling, you know, it was a real shock to learn. And I contacted the charity and said, I'm in Lincoln Hospital. Nobody knows it's such a rare cancer. Help. They were amazing. And, you know, whilst all this was happening, I had to have surgery where I lost quite a bit of my stomach. And my team at head office were amazing. They held the fort, kept things going. People knew on social media that something was up because I wasn't on it. So people were saying, Jane, we've not seen a post for a week. Where are you? What's happening? And I had to come clean and say, I'm in hospital, folks. So that, you know, really for me changed everything, and, you know, a lot of challenges. It changed my personal life. And I actually, for once, said, am I really happy in my life? Where do I want to be in my life? And, you know, I know somebody has said previously on the chat, you just sometimes go, I know what person I am now, and I know what I want, and I don't take any bull. And it's just, you know, it's been a real turning point for me. So, you know, looking into the future, it has been a really, I would say, challenging time for all of us with COVID. And I'm one of those people that I've been running these in-person courses for years, luckily at beautiful venues all around the country. And it's places such as the Hotel Divan, the Dorchester, Coworth Park, Burley House, I could go on. You know, I love that sort of beautiful, beautiful venue, beautiful presentation, obviously. And, you know, with COVID now, I am sort of now thinking my in-person courses had to come to a stop. I'm going to have to really look at going online with a lot more things. So, you know, the courses have been very, very limited. The venues I've been working with have said we can only have a maximum of, say, 6 people. And I've just about broken even because of the cost. Also, my crew have been working from home. You know, I shut the office for a couple of months because we've been trying to just be careful with the money. You know, with these things, you don't know how long it's going to last for. So the old ways of business, I believe, will probably not come back. And you just have to adapt and look at new ways. So, you know, we launched online courses fairly recently, and I filmed an online course back in September in Lincoln with Commute Films, who are fantastic. So if you need any help with filming, they are brilliant. And I work with my digital mentor called Celia Lacey, who was an amazing lady. So I have always been one of those critics that when you're learning a craft like gift wrapping, you need to do it hands-on. And so I've never really been too bothered about running an online course, and then I had to swallow my pride and go, come on, let's do it. So, you know, and the great thing is with doing an online version of that course, the whole world can watch you. You get that instant global audience. You can also have a lot more people attending. I must admit, I'm one of those people who prefers a smaller audience because it's a little bit more, you know, cozy and one-to-one. And I also, you know, I'm looking in the future at running my workshops in much smaller venues, more sort of bite-sized courses. So if you've got any recommendations, folks, for Lincolnshire and local venues where I could run a little, you know, 3-hour workshop with a cup of tea, please let me know in the chat. I would love to hear your feedback. But, you know, I love my job, and I'm one of the luckiest people, you know, in the world. I cannot believe I've been going since 1995, and, you know, I absolutely love it. I have no idea where my future will take me, but I'm just loving the moment, loving the ride. And I'm going to sort of shorten my chat because I know we are running a little bit behind, but you can find me on all of the social media networks, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and the website is janemeans.com. But thank you for having me, ladies, and I'll pass you back.
Thanks, Jane. That was brilliant. And I know we spoke recently on the self-care sessions, didn't we? And so we talked about some of these the experiences you've had, but just that cancer diagnosis, every time I hear you talk about that, I just think it's one of those life-changing moments, isn't it, that you know, just kind of changes over your whole course. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And I love what you just said there about, you know, loving the moment and loving the ride. I think that really kind of will resonate with a lot of people, especially with what we've been going through recently. Now, I know that we haven't had any actual direct questions, I don't think, in the chat that I've been going through anyway. So is there anything that anybody would like to ask the panelists? If you want to raise your hands, as I said, on the reactions at the bottom, or stick them in the chat. And if you want to, you know, unmute, if the panelists unmute themselves, that would be great. And then we can just kind of have a chat. Has anybody got anything they'd like to ask, or any comments you'd like to make, anything that resonated? We would love to hear from you if you did. This is the pressure bit now.
There must be one. There has to be one.
Okay, Dawn, have you just raised your hand there? Dawn Barron.
Yes, hi everyone. Fabulous stories, and one of the things that really resonated with me through all of the stories was just how much each and every one of the speakers had learnt and grown in times of challenge, and when things got really difficult and really stressful. And I did write down a note just to confirm that, just to give an example of that, when Charlotte was saying that she actually became hardened to rejection and became more resilient as a consequence of it in a very tough and difficult environment. And yes, I have watched Devil Wears Prada, and yes, in my early days I did start with Topshop in the buying department, so know what it's like. It can be really quite a nasty, brutal environment, but we learn so much. And I think when you speak to most people, they seem to say they learned so much from those difficult times, and we remember those more than we remember all the soft times. My query today is, do we tend to soften everything too much for our children or our employees, to the point where we support so much in a very kind, supportive, generous way? Are we actually denying them some of the real learning and growth that we've all felt by having some of, you know, those stripes learn and the difficulties that we've had? So be really interested if anyone's got any comments on that.
My kids were at the coalface throughout our entire journey, so they came to literally every single festival with us. They came to everything. They were really fully involved, and they never got bathed in cotton wool or coated in cotton wool, whatever the thing is. They've really, you know, they were really brought up in the tough love fashion, you know, this is it. And it stood them all in great stead. You know, they're 20, nearly 23, nearly 21 and nearly 17 now, and they've all got jobs. They're all at university, they're all doing their A-levels, they're all earning their own money, they all understand about life. So for me, I think you need the knocks in life. I think you need the knocks in life. I think you need to understand life properly and get a good take on it all from that point of view. So to answer your question, do we do sometimes? Yeah, I think some people do. And does it help people? No, I don't think it does. I don't think it helps them. I think you need to bring them up with the true reality of what life's all about, and that's my take.
Brilliant, thanks, Claire. Charlotte, what's your view? Because just put your hand up there.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's something we've actually spoken about, Alexis. I think kind of pre-COVID, it was a big issue anyway. But I think what we're going to find in the next kind of couple of months, as people kind of come off furlough, basically people have been told that they can sit at home on their bums on 80% pay for a good year now. And we're definitely on a business level, like fearing that kind of divide between like the furloughed workers and those that have still been working throughout, because there's this like real lack of empathy. And I think as well, like social media just completely like desensitizes us to sometimes like the reality of the world and actually experiencing those kind of life situations ourselves. And I think we often like live it through other people instead. So I think you know, the next few months is definitely kind of going to be interesting for society. And yeah, I don't know if they're going to come out tougher or not weakened, but a little more fluffy.
Thanks, Charlotte. Emma, I can see you've got your hand up. Hi, Emma, nice to see you.
Hello. Oh wow, what an amazing Friday afternoon. I sort of regretted a little bit having my gym, because I was giggling and I was moved to tears, and it brought all sorts of emotions out listening to those amazing ladies. And I was really thinking all the way through this. Okay, I think, and this is sort of from my experience of working with children as well as in business for years and years and years. But I think it's all about adversity, and we've all recognised that today. But like, what happens is you get that grit, and what we really want in our children is to have grit, because grit is what gets you through the really tough stuff and makes you fight even harder to come out. And I often looked at my children like pre all of this COVID situation and thought, these children haven't had to kind of really face any grit in their lives yet. You know, God forbid that they have to suffer too much adversity. But I do think this situation will give our young people a bit more sense of grit going forward, because this is a big thing that they're living through. And just to pick up on Charlotte's comment, because I hear it a lot in business, and it's a really interesting one around this kind of culture and this sort of sense of, you know, people on furlough and people who aren't on furlough, and the challenge actually of bringing those two teams back together. But I think it has to be acknowledged as well for the people that have been furloughed, that's really tough as well. They've gone through a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty, and when you're sort of sat out of the picture, and I've done it in both of the lots of different situations in lots of the organisations I work for, but there is a horrible feeling of being out of the picture and out of the conversation, and I don't think that's healthy or helpful at all either. And I think it's such a challenge now going forward to bring those teams back together, and that's really where, you know, we've got to pull that grit out of people and support through that big level of adversity that everybody's been through. But thank you so much. This is an amazing afternoon. I've loved my snack box. I've really enjoyed a gin at 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Wow, and such inspiring ladies. Thank you.
So thank you. I just wanted to add into that as well, that I know from the work that we do in organisations that there is that split between people who have been working throughout and people who have been furloughed. And I think you're right, Emma, and I think Charlotte's right as well, that it's how you integrate people back into the workplace and take that into account. And Dawn, I think your question is great, because I was just thinking about, I've got 3 children and how do I bring them up? How was I brought up? This is the therapist in me. I can't help but go back to childhood. But there was something I wanted to say as well, is that, you know, it's okay not to cope. It's okay not to know what to do. It's then what you do with that and how you then kind of find your footing and who helps you, who you ask for help from as well, I think. Because I know myself last year when everything kind of was happening, I know I had one, it was a Sunday evening. I remember it really vividly, thinking, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to know what to do because I don't know what to do. And that Sunday night, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was feeling really flat. And by the Monday morning, I was like, right, well, off we go. You know, we're doing it. And it's like kind of, you know, it's okay to wallow for a bit, but then it's like, okay, so what are you going to do about it? And I think that's the bit where it's hard if you can't get out of that place. It's difficult to move forward. So great question. Thank you. Thanks for your contribution, everybody. I've missed this chat now. Is there any questions in there? I think there was one. Let's see. Is there anybody else who wants to raise their hand? Please feel free as well. There you go. Go, Jane.
I would just love to say I'm having such a good time this afternoon. I'm having to fly off to work shortly. I've got a job with Netflix with some wrapping in London, but it's been absolutely fantastic. Well organised. Tuck Books was delicious. So I think from everybody, thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks so much for saying that. Let me just have a look. There was a question. Let me just see. So this is from Sam, I think. There are so many social media platforms these days. How do you decide which ones to focus on for your business? You've got a great panel here to ask that question to. Charlotte's going to go for this. I know she is. Jane's next.
Jane can jump in as well. Do you know what? So I think between us is about 15 social media accounts that we run. And I think break down like who your target audience is. So for us, we've got the Pig and Whistle, we've got the hotel, we've got our corporate market, our wedding market, our outside catering market, my food styling market, and then the me getting drunk on live camera market. And I think it's like really trying to, Joe knows. So it's really kind of trying to figure out like who your target market is for your business. So Instagram, like ultimately it's kind of like more visual, and I think, you know, now with stories and the lives, there's that personability there. Facebook is like a good all-rounder. Twitter there's generally a lot of trolling, but it's a good way to connect to businesses, whereas obviously LinkedIn is very business focused, but ultimately someone might want a wedding, someone might want to be in a restaurant, you know, there's a good variety of people out there. So it's just kind of breaking down and really focusing on your target audience.
Brilliant. Thank you, Charlotte. That's fab. Jane, do you want to jump in then? I'll come to you, Claire.
Yeah, I'm always being asked this with people starting out on business. They come on a course, you know, have you got any tips how to run a business whilst you're at it? And for me, because I'm a creative business, Instagram is without doubt a fantastic platform to use, and it's so versatile as well. I have just started using TikTok. I know it's for the teens, but I am a teen. I'm doing my Wonder Woman thing there. I've just done a few videos at Christmas, and one of them's had like over 2 million, which is ridiculous. I do find Twitter is brilliant for reaching out to press and business to business, and through that I got the award with Theo Paphitis as well. So I think that brings a lot of opportunities. Facebook, even after, you know, so many years, I'm still learning about it, but I find Facebook is great. You get a good response to it, and it's a real mixture. But certainly for me, it's Instagram, hands down.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Jane. How about you, Claire?
Really enjoying Clubhouse, the new one at the moment. So if anybody's on iPhone, get yourself over to Clubhouse, because it's a good opportunity to get in right now in its infancy, because you can create your own rooms and have chats in there, and you can be really targeted on where you want to go, what chats you want to have. So I think it depends what your business is, who your ideal client avatar is, but check Clubhouse out if you're not already on there.
That shows how far behind I am, because I've never heard of it. So I'll be checking that out after this. Thank you.
It's really good. It's not available for Android just yet. They're going to roll that out soon, but it's already rolled out for iPhone. But it's a platform purely for speaking. So there's no visual, which is great for some people right now. They don't want to, you know, we're zoomed out, aren't we? We're Zoom fatigued. So it's literally, it's like popping into a chat and having a chat on it's like a radio really, but you just get invited up to speak on stage and you listen to people, and there's some amazing, because everyone's feeling so generous on there at the moment, you've got access to some really, really great advice from some top people, and yeah, jump on while you can.
Brilliant, that's great, thanks Claire. And Sarah's just put the link of that into the chat as well. So just got another question here from I think it's from Kate and Kelly at Humber HR. Hello, nice to see you both. See you both sitting there. The question from, well, they both said they've lovely afternoon, which is lovely. And the question is really that, what do you think as a panel about the opportunities from COVID-19?
I think it's made people so much more creative, and it's taken away, I don't know, barriers, because there's no rules right now, is there? The whole world's been shaken up, turned upside down. And it's like, what can we do? How much colour can we bring? What can we create? How can we develop what we already do and share it even more? And I think people have never been so open, and there's more innovation than, I know a lot of businesses have closed and struggled, but equally I think there's been huge amounts of innovation and imagination from people.
Couldn't agree more, actually. I think last year I was blown away I was trying to keep up with ideas, to keep up with everybody. Charlotte, have you got something to say about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Opportunities, learning to drink my whole bar and having great product knowledge, my wine list for when we reopen. Obviously an ongoing theme with alcohol with me. No, do you know what, like for us, I think I'm going to have to speak to you after this, Claire, actually, because it's opened up like new product opportunities. And I think what you've just said, Jenny, about like this kind of like colourful creativity, especially online, it's just opened up so many doors. I think for me personally, it's kind of, I've had to overcome my fears and boundaries of jumping in front of a camera and speaking online. And I know, like Alexis, we had a similar conversation, like as a business, like our reaction is like, we just have to do it. So I think it's just broken down like so many kind of fears and barriers for us all. So yeah, so lots of great opportunities, I think, for all businesses really.
Definitely. And I think
one of the nicest things I've had is I video call both my grandparents.
Oh.
I know, I don't know, it's made like different generations all submerge within like WhatsApp and FaceTime and Zoom. I've loved that it's brought us all together in that way.
Yeah, definitely. I remember doing a quiz with my parent, well, our whole family. I can't remember what the app was we used, but it was like watching my parents who are in their 70s trying to figure out what was happening and what they should be pressing. But, you know, it's been great. It's brought us together in different ways, a bit more flexible ways, I think, as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. I remember being on the landline to my grandma, and she had the mobile. I was like, press this button, press this button. And then she like clicked on. She's like, oh my God, I can see you. So it has brought some lovely things.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Oh, someone just asked, Joe, saying, can we do it every month? Joe, shush now. It's been fantastic. Thank you, everyone. And thanks for sticking around. I know we're a bit over time. I just wanted to say a few things that I picked up from today, really. And I don't know if it's just because of how I've heard what you've said, but these are the things that kind of stuck out for me. One of them is about saying yes, which I know everyone at Fortis will all kind of roll their eyes at, because I'm always like, say yes and figure it out later. It'll be fine. We'll get there. And I really took that, and about taking risks, I think, and just kind of putting yourself out there and trusting yourself that you can get what get what you're going for. I love the idea of going guerrilla with your marketing and being that positive, disruptive influence as well. And that idea as well about surrounding ourselves with warm, kind souls, because I think that is definitely something that's come out for me over the last year is, who's in my circle and who do I trust and who's important to me. And I love the idea of the Wonder Woman mindset. I'm going to use that loads. I'm going to get my children doing that. And the glow and grow mindset as well, Jenny, brilliant idea. And I love as well from Jane the idea of owning your own original ideas. I think that's so important, and knowing that you've got that ownership and also adapting and not taking any bullshit. And I think as well, what I've also learned is if you're not sure, Google it, because it's there. It's absolutely there for the taking. So thanks, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this afternoon. It's been lovely to see you all. I hope it started off your weekend on a good note. So I'm sure we're doing other events at Fortis, and I know that the Showground obviously will be as well. So keep your eyes open, and we'll be in touch about future things as well. So lovely to see you all. Enjoy your weekend and take care. Bye.